Bless up.
Bless up, bless up.
Oh my goodness, this is so exciting. I almost feel like I technically am like meeting celebrities, so it's
Not me, not me.
Too kind.
He's the celebrity here.
My name's Josh. I've been married to Aislinn for just over 5 years. Currently, we are living on the West Coast in Canada. I run an Instagram called Sword and Pencil. That takes the majority of my time. And yeah, we're excited to have this conversation on life and love and sex and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that the conversations that and thoughts that we've had to develop, and they had to be conversational. So like, I mean, to start grounding this in reality, once we started dating, like we had our lines and we crossed them many, many times. And I had a framework that was very like I was brutal on myself. Anytime I made a mistake, it would be almost every classical trope you could imagine, you know, like I'm the man, I need to be leading us in purity, and I made this mistake. And then it was just total like self-abasement or self-deprecation.
Yeah.
And then it just became this vicious cycle of like me hating myself long enough that I felt like I earned enough grace. And then we crossed the line again, whatever, right? So like conversationally, what we had to do was essentially say, God made us male and female, and he gave us these sexual desires. We're sexual beings in the sense of we're gendered beings. We have man parts and girl parts, and we have desires that go along with those things. And that's good, right? That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Oftentimes what we do is we say, no, those desires are not good. The repression, and that repression often leads to other forms of, what would you say? Deception, deviation.
Yeah, I don't know, it's like one of the little blow balls you try to push under the water and it's just going to pop up somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just like the thing is, like, oftentimes when we try to repress something in ourselves, it will pop up in other ways. There's other dysfunctions or things, because we're trying to hide something that is a deeper issue. So let's say there is lust, or there is, you know, sexual temptation, there are, you know, mistakes that people are making. Rather than coming to terms with having the conversation about it, we sometimes cope by
we lie about
pretending.
it. Yeah,
there's a lot of pretending. There's a lot of, you know, needing to hit ourselves and our, you know, our lashes for our ill behaviors. Yeah, I mean, like I think self-deception is a big one.
So often what tends to happen in that self-deception, repression area is we tell ourselves lies, right? We tell ourselves lies that make us feel okay and so like the deception would be something like, well, that's clearly manifesting in some other capacity in your life.
Yeah.
Where in reality, a whole and healthy Christian view from a man to a woman and women to men is there are tons of gorgeous, amazing, beautiful, handsome men and women on this planet. And I need to learn to control my own desires and direct them towards what God says is good, whether in my relationship or waiting for a relationship. But then the other end is just as bad, right? So you have this other end, which is like our culture's idol, which is sex is the ultimate God.
Yeah.
If you feel it, do it, because it must be good, you know? And like you said, it dehumanizes us because it reduces the category of love to one narrow And oftentimes we talk about sex, we're just talking about intercourse, right? So it reduces love to one action.
Yeah.
Which is completely against what the Christian belief of what love is, which is like this intense, deep unity that is completely self-giving and unconditional. And that is way bigger than just like a single act for pleasure. And so both of those things you kind of see culturally, but then you also see them kind of seep into how we form our categories and idols in the church.
You want to add to that? You're
No,
so
no.
excited.
I am. I just I want to make sure, because I think what you're saying is super key, right? So when there is an answer to going too far repeatedly, which is, well, you must get rid of it. And that is a bad answer. It could be a good answer, but it is a bad answer if it's the only answer. What the answer needs to be is something like, the person needs to say, okay, I'm crossing the line all the time. Why am I crossing this line all the time? And if the answer you give is, I just genuinely love this person with my entire body and soul, that's great. So then what needs to happen is what you're saying is, okay, we have to sacrifice part of this longing for the fulfillment that God says is a-okay. But that shouldn't just be sacrifice. We should additionally add in other beautiful, good things that we can do together as a couple. So to take that passion and then direct it towards other amazing celebratory things.
Right, exactly. Because I think that people are like, oh, you need to just read your Bible more. That's why you're lusting so much. Like you just need to, you need to memorize a bunch of scripture. That's not bad. None of these are bad things. But like oftentimes God just isn't, he's probably going like, would you guys just like go have some fun, with me and in like, whatever it may be in the arts or in music or in community and friendship and like, and so I think that's not saying that like people aren't doing that and aren't no longer doing lustful things. Like that doesn't happen, doesn't just go away. But but that's just like an idea. Just like oftentimes I'm like, why is it like this is
it's a great idea.
Yeah, like we're all a little bit extreme. Like we can't help it. We're human.
And what would be those? Because you both mentioned talking about like the celebrations and things like that. So what like kind of elaborating like what does that look like? What is that?
Yeah, like so for us, and this again, like every couple will be different. So for us, like we just started, and like it essentially had to be something like, okay, here are situations where that longing is going to overwhelm us, and we're going to lose every time. So why don't we just go do other stuff, but not just other stuff you're supposed to do. Like let's go to the same coffee shop all the time. Let's do X date. Let's do Y date. I think that's actually the beginning of when we became very intentional about being there for other people and not presuming that we're a couple. So for us, we're like, you know what? We crazy love people. And we also don't like being the couple that when you show up, they're like, they're just, how do you say it? They have no existence apart from each other.
Right, yeah. Like we're both very different personalities and we have like a lot of different passions. And then like, bringing inclusivity amongst friends and family and not exclusivity apart from them. Like we are the couple that comes together and does everything together. We're like, okay, we want to bring, we want community to be a big part of our relationship.
So we would do like a games night. And we would have like a bunch of our single friends over and couple friends or whatever. And I just wouldn't talk to Aislinn all night.
Yeah.
We'd be with other people together. And then after we'd normally go for a beer and like chat about our night together. And then like, we'd be like, that was amazing. Yeah. It's not like at that time, like what we wanted to do that night, but it was still a beautiful celebratory thing where we're using our gifts and we're hitting our desires and passions. And then we had this togetherness after that was in like this very healing and rewarding category. Right. I think that shaped it. And then we did some salsa dancing stuff and we would explore the city together. I think like overcoming is just like really basically like get yourself in a really healthy community, like you said, that can be vulnerable and empathetic. Pray about it. And then the deepest thing is want to change. Like Lewis talks about this thing of with our mouths we say, yeah, I want to be chaste, but with our hearts we say not yet. And it was Augustine? Could be.
Well, Lewis said that, but he was quoting
Augustine. And so like just the idea of like it has to be a thing we desire and have to learn to catch a vision for. And I think that's like what you said, there are deeper joys to be woken up to.
Yeah.
But then to realize it's a process, and that's why you're in a community, it's an ongoing conversation.
And to be conscious of the self-deception, because to say, I only do it this many times and I'm not as bad as that guy, that's a whole thing in itself. And comparing and saying like, I'm better because I don't do this list of things. So yeah, to be conscious of our own propensity to deceive ourselves. So we're so good at it. We're so good at being like, it's okay because it's not that bad. You know, it's like we give ourselves all these leniences always. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And then it's still tough. It's going to be tough.
It will still be tough. Like it doesn't, adding celebratory things in doesn't negate the fact that you will like just want to get it on. Right? And you're not going to be able to get rid of those feelings. And that's a good thing. And like, again, when the two of you go your separate ways, you'd be like, God, thank you that I still love this person so much. I just want to like fulfill that desire. And then say, thank you for giving me the strength that I can say yes when you say it's good, which is using this for its right time. But in the meantime, you give hundreds of other ways that we can be good and loving together.
Yes. Like, and that's the thing, is we can make it quite simple by being like, well, we just don't touch until we're married. And that's unrealistic and dehumanizing in a way. It's like, all you have to do is just sort of like robot your way into the altar, you know, and then also, you know, there's this thing of like, do we even have chemistry? Because chemistry is a massive part of relationships. So, I just feel like there's so many thoughts on that. Which is another interesting sort of like stereotype that like, you know, women don't have as much of like, you know, desire for sex as men do. It's like, that's something that I'd love to break down, especially within the church. It's just like, that's not a true thing. You know, women are just as like apt to, want to do things sexually just as much as men. But,
And so I would say number one, recognize the desires in and of themselves are not bad. So oftentimes we beat ourselves up for desires, not lust, and that's a bad thing. And that looks like either it tends towards repression or to exaltation, when in reality we say, God gave me good desires and he also gave me discipline to use those desires in ways that are intended for good. So the category that we have as far as like what needs to govern our boundaries within relationships is the pursuit of purity with wisdom. And so that means the two of you will be together, person A and person B will be together, and you're going to pursue purity wisely together. And so there's a lot baked into that, to those words. And so we had like seasons that we went through where some things were tighter than others. We had lines that like that lines moved. For me, it got way harder closer to being married, and for Aislinn, it got way easier closer to being married. As we got closer, I was like, we can just do it now. And she's like, no, we're gonna get married soon. We do not need to do this. And so like, that's just, we had to pursue wisdom or purity together with wisdom. And so like, she had to be very sacrificial because I had a much more conservative line at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, because that, like I think that oftentimes people are looking for rules and regulations, and that helps. Like, that rules aren't wrong or bad. Like, it's good to have structure, but then sometimes, you know, implemented structure or inferential structure, like structure that's sort of placed in front of people, they will hold on to as their rule of law, whereas God might be like, actually there's certain things that you don't need, but you're using this as a crutch instead of pursuing wisdom, instead of trying to understand, you know, yourself more, to understand my word more, to understand how to behave with this individual, because it's a new relationship, it's a new experience. Like you have to not just have the 12 steps into purity, you have to have the conversation behind why.
So essentially, like, it was like, I guess what we're trying to say is something like, there are reasons why the purity movement, I Kiss Dating Goodbye, is so influential, because it just gives you, like you said, 12 steps to be pure. And it's not really real. Like, no one, like, we know people who didn't kiss till their wedding day. And if we had done that, we would have broken up, because, like, one of your love languages is touch and affection. And, like, if I didn't kiss you till your wedding day, you would have felt the opposite of beautiful.
Yes, exactly.
And the opposite of desirable.
Yeah. So if anything, that would have been sinning not to, I don't think. I mean, is it sinning? But I don't know. It's sort of like,
Could have been
it
destructive.
would have been destructive, you know? And so that for us was like, that's something that we definitely need to like
do.
We need to do, but we don't, you know, we
It
can't, yeah.
So in Romans chapter 2, you have like the love is patient, love is kind thing behind you. Yep. And so in Romans chapter 2, I think it's 15, I could be wrong. It talks about the divine attitude towards humanity, which is love, which is patience and kindness. So patience and kindness, Paul says, and I think it's in Romans chapter 2, is what leads us out of sin and into God's love. So the categories of God's redemption are something like, I will love you so patiently and so kindly, it will redeem you from sin. And I mean, he proved it by giving himself up to death and then rising again. And so in our churches, we need to develop these cultures that are so loving and so patient and so kind that people, Jesus says that's where power is, that's where redemption comes from.
I think ultimately the whole goal of this is that we continue to ask those questions and we surround ourselves with good communities that we can be vulnerable with, that we can open up to, that we can work through the questions with, and then continue to like stay informed, to, you know, continue our own personal study into understanding why we do the things we do, and not to just blanket statement things to make it easier for ourselves. It's important to know ourselves well. And that's the joy of being a Christian, is that we get to go deeper into the fullness of being human and full of the Holy Spirit. So
yeah, and I think the only thing is something you said earlier, which is like to learn to view the things that are in front of us that we don't always want to do, that God says are good, as divine invitations into his wholeness, right? We have a way of looking at life, like you were saying, as purely sacrificial, where God is saying, but there is, like Lewis says this thing, like we are too easily pleased, right? We're too easily pleased with these lesser things, and God's saying, no, I have good in store for you. And just to learn to develop those structures when it comes to our singleness and our dating and our marriage and our boundaries and relationships across the board.
Yeah, because our goal is wholeness. It's not marriage, it's not sex. Our goal is to have fullness in God, and to find the enjoyments that make us more alive as the people we are here on this life. So yeah,
that's good.
You're lovely.
Yeah, this is great.
We'll probably talk again soon.
Yeah, we'll talk with you soon.
Yes, thanks so much. Bye.
See ya.
See ya.